good evening and welcome to the November 21st meeting of the Goffstown Economic Development Council. If you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. What?
November 1st.
You skipped 20 days.
November 1st is what I meant to say. Would we start with this Pledge of Allegiance? I got that part right now. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a quorum. I think we need to start with the approval of the September 2nd meeting minutes. Does someone make a motion for that?
Yeah, if nobody has changes, all motion to approve.
Okay, motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is seconded. All in favor?
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, you abstain, that makes sense. Okay, so that's approved. And then we also need approval of the minutes from October 4th. It's a very extensive document from that meeting that we have to
Yeah,
take a look at.
When I first handed them in, they got tossed back to me and they said, you need to put a time of adjournment.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
I don't know when that was, I just guessed.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I'll motion.
Thank you, Charlie. Second.
I'm on it.
I'll second.
Second by Dick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. So those are approved. We can move forward.
Yes,
So,
you just can't be a chair, fill in for the chair.
what's that?
I'm just checking.
He
to
was
see if I
wondering,
can
he was
vote.
voting
Oh, yeah.
member.
Vote. Yeah.
I always get mixed up.
So for old business, I know we had talked about a planning board rep on the EDC that can help engage in discussions about all things involving planning, from site-ready plans to the expansion of sewer to I think we were talking about electricity and natural gas. I mean, so
So I did bring it up to the planning board
yep.
and no one wanted to volunteer.
Okay, so I did sort of anticipate that, so I think there's a couple of ways which we talked about in the last meeting. So one of the things that we can do, because I think that the disconnect between the boards, not the purposeful disconnect, but just a disconnect in general, means we miss some important things that may or may not be happening. That was great. I'm doing great today. I'm doing great. So that may or may not be happening in town. We sometimes will miss that affects economic development. So I've asked Joanne to bring in just the agendas, but I just received I think a better suggestion from Gail to my left, that maybe when Joanne, you already get all these agendas and you send them out, so if you can BCC the EDC.
So I actually don't do that.
Oh,
Patty handles
Patty.
the agendas for planning and zoning and conservation.
okay.
So if you want, I can have her copy you guys, or she can just send them to me and I can copy you, or I can include them in the following agenda, however you want to do it. I just grabbed this off the website.
Okay. Just as long as we can look at it before we start. I mean, I didn't see anything on here that affects anything economic
This is all
development.
residential
Yeah, it's all
requests.
residential. So,
This meeting is next week, and then planning meets next week as well, but they're meeting for a workshop to go over proposed zoning changes.
okay.
And then they have another meeting on November 16th.
So I guess that's what we should do, I think, here. Every week is a matter of just what we do in the agenda, is speak about anything coming up, planning or zoning that affects EDC. If we can't get a rep here to update us, Joanne is very knowledgeable about what's going on, so you can certainly do that for us.
Sure.
So when you say zoning changes, what do you mean by that?
So every year, the voters, as you know, vote on the voting proposed changes that the planning board puts forth to the voters. However, prior to all of that, there's lots of work being done behind the scenes as far as putting the the changes, like meeting as a group, figuring out what they'd like to change based on what's happened during the year. And also, we take requests from the zoning code enforcement officer, the building inspector. And this year, I asked Derek if he had anything. So we're trying to cover all ends as far as what needs to be changed. So next week, I'll provide them with a list of what we have, and then we'll go over each one. Some of them get removed and others get refined, and then eventually we put them in the format for the warrant. And then they hold a public hearing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's one, is there one?
Usually two. And there's also a time period, which is like a month between November and December, when someone could come forward with a petition
Right.
or an article. But we haven't had one of those in a while now. We used to get them
Yeah.
quite a bit.
And how much did you say, I mean, an estimate, but how much is zoned commercially right now for Goffstown?
It's only, I don't think I took that with me. It's a very small amount. It's like 200 and something acres.
211 acres
Yep.
is on the minutes.
And out of that, how many are attractive to incoming businesses that could be site-ready without costing a lot to start? I know you probably don't have the answer to that right now, and nor would I expect that, but those are the kinds of things that maybe we can look at as we try to coordinate with zoning and planning around that. Everything can change, that's what voters can do. So in looking, and this kind of ties in, I can talk about two things at once, right?
Yeah.
So it sort of ties into the full-time director position. I've got some calls from people that thought I might still be on the select board when they got their escrow.
No.
And they are, some people are legitimately concerned about being priced out and more concerned about what's happening next year and the year after. So I think that is something we have to consider when we look at making a proposal for a full-time position. But I don't mean we have to consider that by saying let's not do it. I mean, we have to find a way, as with everything that we would like to change, educating the community on how that position, and I think relatively speaking compared to the other costs that we have in town, could actually help bring in more businesses and help offset that tax rate for people in residential settings. So I think that could be a focus for us going through the next year, so that when we do finally meet with the select board, we can speak to that on a pretty high level. So I think looking at, and I'm gonna shush, and I want everyone else to help me out, but if we can look at what can we do from a zoning perspective, followed by what can we do from a planning perspective for site-ready plans so that we can become attractive, followed by the benefits to the residents of the community from the perspective of offsetting, not offsetting, that's the wrong word, but helping out with the tax rate, because there's always going to be union negotiations, there's always going to be escalating prices, and so will always go to the residents unless we have additional businesses. Finding a way to look at it that way, and I think also the kinds of businesses that could actually benefit the residents of Goffstown. So those are the things I think we look at, and at this point, any other feedback on what we should focus on throughout the year, I'm open to hearing about, because those are the two things in my brain.
I think it's all about the justification of that person, and all of those things that you're saying certainly are, and I guess then you'd compare it to the opportunities that you have to develop, and it would take, you talk about the percentage of land that's could be commercial, what all of those things, though, I think you would have to look at, so that we can make the justification for this person that can dig deeper and be able to help and be that liaison between the planning board, select board, to everybody in the loop. That's what we're missing, I think. We talk about trying to have a representative here. It's kind of
Yeah.
we're out on an island here by ourselves sometimes.
You wouldn't want to just look at land that could be rezoned to commercial. You'd want to make sure that the land has some sort of utilities, at least water or sewer or something, or preferably both, because you're limited in what you can do for commercial if you don't have those. I mean, you're looking at smaller operations.
Well, it's kind of like we talked about the Mass Road corridor, you know, is to advocate for bringing those lines in down to, you know, what's the potential there? And, you know, how about the existing businesses or commercial sites that are there?
I had a really good conversation with the owner of New Hampshire Steel about 2 weeks ago. He's one of the guys who had called that he couldn't make the meeting at the brewery, but he was still interested in what was going on. And he was saying, he's down off of Daniel Plummer in the industrial section by like the Cody Park area. And he was saying that, you know, if years ago he had asked the town to bring in, it must have been sewer. I don't know what's down there now. I think half the road where the condos are have sewer, but the other half where the industrial section is doesn't.
I think that's right.
And he was telling me that years ago he had talked with the town and he offered with a few others to pay for the extension, and you know they just couldn't get things to go their way. And he was saying if they had been able to bring, you know, have both utilities down there available to the industrial owners and tenants, he said it would have just been such a different scenario from what they have now, because they can only do so much without public utilities. But he was very interesting. I'd love to invite him into a future meeting.
do it.
He's been here for 40 years with his business, and he's has a lot of things to say and a lot of ideas. He's also the one who paid for the new fields at the football stadium.
He was on.
Yeah.
So we could certainly invite him to talk about what happened then, maybe take a look at it and
Yeah.
see what we can do
Sure.
going forward. That'd be great. And to your point, Joanne, I think that it has to be parallel efforts, or one thing will bump into another. So I think you made a good point. We need to look at what we currently have zoned, and figure out how we can make those site ready, what kinds of advocacy efforts we need to take part in to make those ready. But Dick, to your point, I think we also need to look at, you know, what can we look at from a zoning perspective that could be commercial that's not, that maybe might attract some new businesses. I think two of those things happening at the same time could be great. So, I don't know, any other thoughts on those two areas of focus? Okay, and Sarah, we don't have this on old business, but you, myself, Melanie, and Joanne met, and it was a lot about this, but is there anything I'm leaving out that we spoke of?
I'm not thinking of anything.
Okay. Wow, really? I got the date wrong, my chair's falling, but I got all that stuff right?
Yeah, because we were having a conversation, and I think the conversation was kind of like we're in this position where we have a small amount of land that's commercial, and as we want to move forward and develop it, we have to really think about how we can do that, and not get discouraged in the process because of the amount of land,
Right.
you know, and just, you know, it's going to require a lot to get people to come in and use what we have. And so we really need to focus on it and make sure we get it right. I mean, I think that's what we were talking about, just, you know, not feeling like I thought that we had we talked about just something as small as helping the small business with the food truck was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one of the highlights of our year, right? We had changed something. And I think sometimes, like, that's huge. I went around when I was talking to people in Pinardville, trying to invite them to the meeting, was talking to them about that, and people were like, oh, like, you know, they like the fact that, you know, we actually want to do something or want to help. So I think it's, I mean, we didn't really get into too deep into that, but I think it's just a matter of just knowing that what we do matters. It could take a long time, and then we just need to be patient and forge forward.
And again, this was a discussion, another discussion that you had with Joanne.
So we talked at this meeting about a meeting we would have in between. where we
Like a
would talk about
subcommittee.
Kinda, yeah,
Yeah.
but without, just more like an informal meeting. Okay, let's
Okay.
talk about what it would look like for us to move forward to try to advocate for a full-time position.
Yeah.
What would our justifications be? And we did have a good conversation around all of that. So,
Yeah, definitely.
So the 211 acres of commercial land, is that what's zoned out, or is that available,
That's the
available land?
total.
So that's the total
Yeah.
zoned out? And then, okay.
So I can find out, the assessor can run all of these different reports.
Mm-hmm.
So I can find out if you want certain ones for me to ask for, like say for instance, if you want vacant land where there's no buildings at all.
So I'm just trying to go through my head of, our targeting efforts for advocacy and, what would we want this full-time director to do, and taking a look at what is the vacant commercial properties, why are they vacant, and just to kind of coalesce around something to advocate for.
Mm-hmm.
I think starting with, I think we need some information of like, what should that person focus on, and why if we're trying to build in new businesses and we have open land, why isn't it being used?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that's,
So that's
I
what's
think
there.
you're taking the same way. We have to make, I guess it's for us to figure out, okay, what's the potential? And I guess that's part of what we would have to do. Is kind of look at what's there right now, and then say how much potential is there? What's the best utilization, and do we need to advocate? And we
Yeah.
can't do that, we need somebody to do that.
Well, yeah, exactly. To find out like what is the scope of advocacy that we need to do. I think it would also be. So I was reading from the September minutes. It sounds like Bedford Business Resource Group proposed that position. It was ultimately voted down. And so, to your point, Chet, about educating the town to the benefits, I think we need to scope out what those would be. And so I think, maybe that's a place to start, of having an idea of what's open. So if our focus is new business, bringing that in, why are new businesses not coming, and what land do we have, and what is it lacking? And then these are the things that that person would advocate for, making those connections between the various bodies.
And I also think it would be very helpful if someone in that position was developing more of an identity for the town. And what I mean by that is, like, we have 3 distinct village areas. We know that we have more commercial zoning in Penarville than anywhere else. So that's one set of land. Then we have Grassmere, and we have the village. And we have support in the village with the Main Street program. Sometimes I'm sure there's more support there, but so we have that, but that's a business district. And then Grassmere to the side, and there's a couple businesses obviously in Grassmere, but not a lot.
Not
right?
much, no.
Yeah, and maybe that's the I don't know the answer to this. So to be residential commercial, if someone wanted to have a home business, what is the process on that? Because that is something that perhaps could be addressed, because it is a bedroom community in our town, and maybe if there are people that thought they could have a business in their house where they might have people stop by, whether it be, I don't know, an antique business.
You are allowed to have a home occupation. It's listed in our zoning ordinance, and there's restrictions that go with it. You can't have more than so many employees.
Yep. But I mean, that's another
But
way
it
to,
is permitted, if you
Right.
follow the rules, basically.
I mean, that might be a way for us to develop more, obviously it's gonna bring in revenue to the town, which is a positive thing. And it doesn't change, zoning doesn't necessarily have to be changed.
No.
And so there is opportunity within the town itself, is all I'm saying. And that's another area that might be able to be looked into. Because when we were doing the survey, there were a lot of businesses on that old survey
Yeah.
that were home businesses. And I mean, I can think of several home businesses, CNC Woodworking, that's the one that came to mind right off the bat. But there are other home businesses, right in town that,
There's many of them.
right. And that's another way to,
So technically, they're supposed to register their business, although no one, I shouldn't say that, most people don't. And so we don't know, who they are. Those people happen to get on that list somehow. I think there's more and more every day, just because, since COVID,
Yeah,
so
I
many
think
more
so, too.
people are working out of their homes, and so many more people have started up these, small startup businesses.
and that's something that a director could do. They could have a meeting and saying, I'm inviting all small business owners, for a meet and greet, we would have a difficult time doing that. If someone was devoted to that, they could have a meet and greet. They could have a meet and greet in Pinardville. They could have a meet and greet in Grassmere. They could have a meet and greet in the village. You know what I mean? They could develop this identity, which would make us unusual, and which would draw businesses, because then you have a very commercial section, you have a quaint country village, and then you have more like farming, more homey, I guess. I'm not really sure to say, but it's definitely like I think it's an advantage that we have before we, fall into Manchester, right? Because we're right on the edge, so that's just my thought. I think that there's a lot of development that could happen that could be around zoning, but not necessarily with a lot of zoning changes, where you could still have positive growth and you could see movement, which I think keeps us motivated. Thanks for letting me say all that.
Sure. Question, Joanne, on that. If someone does have a residential, and we'd support any business, of course, but if someone has a residential business, nothing changes from a tax perspective for that person, correct?
I don't believe so. I had a home business, not me personally, but someone that was living there had a business in my home for, I don't know how many years it was, 20-something years. And the taxes didn't change when the status of that changed.
That's what I thought. Okay. That makes sense.
So it doesn't make revenue. Okay.
But it's still important that we can support businesses so that there's more options for people in the
And they
community.
might grow out of their home.
And they could too.
That's true.
So a lot of them do.
Could be really positive. Oh, I know another location. The yoga studio closed. The woman who owns the yoga studio on Mass Road, and she's not sure what she's going to do with it.
The one in Pinardville?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Oh no, she just didn't need to work.
Oh,
Nice.
I like
problem.
that.
I want that problem. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure I would ever want that problem, but it is nice. It's a nice problem to have.
Joanne, just curious, do we have information from other towns that have a full-time director position of what that total cost is between salary and benefits?
so the salaries, I don't have them off the top of my head, but I remember they varied depending on if it was a smaller town to a city. So like, I remember Concord was paying roughly about 120 to 30,000, whereas
That include benefits.
no, that was just the salary. Whereas others would probably be closer to like maybe 60.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So in looking at that, so we have Sarah's suggestion, I think, really speaks more to bringing in more businesses to give the community and residents of the community more options locally for them to buy goods or get services, which is awesome. And then we also have the parallel zoning and planning efforts for what's already commercially zoned, because that does actually have an impact for taxpayers, and having those full is nothing but helpful for the taxpayers. So I think that, and all that, so just to put a bow on that for me would be, I'm not a construction expert. So I think if we had someone that could work on this full time and they said, okay, this is all commercially zoned, but there's ledge. I barely know what ledge is, but I know it's a problem in New Hampshire.
Yes.
And so if that is
Big
a
problem.
huge issue in those commercially zoned areas, then maybe that person could help educate us on
Or
what it would look like,
yeah.
and how we could help fix that problem. What kinds of, can we create something in the town through the select board to help someone who's willing to take over one of those spaces and deal with that problem and make it site ready. Like these are things that I think we could focus on, but only if someone's moving the needle in between meetings. And I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but what I do wish we had was a list of really brilliant ideas that I've heard in my time on this council that have gone nowhere because we just can't do anything in between the meeting. Because there have been some really good ones that I think we've just lost along the way. That being said, scheduling the meeting with the select board we should do once we are really sure exactly what we want to say and what we're looking for, and we are educated ourselves, so that makes sense. Moving on to anything else on that before I move to new business?
Just, maybe you talked about this in September, but do we have are we able to get a copy of, or what Bedford was proposing for that position? Whoever your contact is, would they still have? you
I don't
what-
know, it's been such a long time.
Okay.
I mean, I could ask. Maybe somebody still has a file on it.
I did do a Google search just to see like what it brought up. And there are positions like in other communities and other areas in the United States with the same type of position that's open that kind of lists everything that they're looking for and what the job entails and what their expectations are and what they're looking for in a person to do it. So I mean, I'm thinking that that is a good resource for us. You know, might not be exactly the same, but at least it'll give us the ideas of what we need.
Yeah.
So are you still planning to ask for this in this coming budget? No.
No.
Okay.
No, not after the calls I got. No.
Okay.
So I think what we need to do is really sort of focus on moving to the next budget and also deciding how we want to approach it. I know that there's two different ways that we can do this, right? There's to get it onto the ballot. We go to the select board, right, and we have that meeting,
And they could include it in the budget,
right? Or
You
or
can have a separate
or
article. you can do
someone can do a
separate
special
special
article.
article, and we just to get a bunch of signatures for people, and that, which might be the better way to go because that does help educate the community on what we're trying to do. And you do have an option in that at that point to at town meeting go up and have a real conversation about it, advocate for it in that way. So that may be we just have to decide how we want to do that. So that'll be over the course of the next year or so.
Okay. The selectmen did meet Monday evening, and I watched part of the meeting, and they finalized reviewing the town budget, and they were starting to get ready to send it over to the budget committee for their review.
Yeah.
But they started to have a conversation about how it was actually too high. So they've sent it back to the department heads and asked that they make adjustments and reduce each department's budget by 1%.
Okay. And so not this Monday, but the next one after that, there will be
I think they're
This
meeting
Monday.
again
We're
this
meeting
Monday.
this Monday.
this
Yeah.
Monday. Okay, so that's when department heads will come in and let you know what they did.
Yeah.
Well, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's gotta be, God, this is not a good time to ask for money.
Agreed. And to be fair to Joanne gave me that warning 5 months ago when I brought this up, that it was looking like a tough time to do this, and I understand, but it's sort of like the counter, not a counter to Joanne, but a counter to that point is that if we had someone doing this and we had more businesses, maybe there would be some relief in that for the residents, and so when there are escalating costs, we have more businesses that currently exist that help us with that.
I know there was a total of 2 million, no, that's not right. 2 million, what was the increase this year when they took into account the revenue? It was 2 million higher? This doesn't sound right.
Revenue directly from Goffstown businesses?
From, not just from businesses, just overall.
For the tax revenue?
For the tax.
Residential, yeah, the
So-
assessment and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
I can find out from Scott if he has
Then, yeah.
any
And what
idea, if he's
percentage of
able
that
to
is,
break it down
commercial?
to the new growth that we've had, the new businesses that are already being taxed on it. So they'd have to have been completed
Right.
and have their CO by April of 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was some, down Mass Road, there's some significant increases, what?
Yeah.
Car wash, it was one, that's for sure. But the others, that's right, the others aren't built yet.
They're not
are they?
finished yet. Factory Street will be finished in January, but there's a delay in getting their heating equipment. It's like all across the country, everyone's backlogged, going back to COVID, and they've never like caught up. So they can't move in until they,
Bad time not to have heat.
yeah, especially right in
Yeah,
the
I
middle of the winter. January, it's the worst
Just-
month
Just summer residents on the river.
with no river.
That's another.
One thing, Joanne, I just want to go back to something John, I think it was John that said it, about if we can find out from Scott what we have commercially zoned that's currently not in use, or maybe if he could, he may not be able to do this all between now and next month, but I would like to know what is commercially zoned that is vacant, and also out of that, what's commercially zoned that is vacant with absolutely no building or property or place for business at all. Out of
mean-
what's,
Like unbuildable or?
no, so we have
Just
211
There,
acres,
you
right?
took one.
We have 211 acres zoned commercially, and, you know, out of that, how many is just empty businesses that maybe there is
Oh,
a spot,
vacant
like, you know, at the Fun City Plaza? See what
I
did
don't
there?
know if he'd know that
Okay,
because
that's fine.
they're still paying taxes on the property.
That's right, because the owners for the plaza are, okay. So then it
Unless
would
they
be,
filed for an abatement.
right, which they could have. But then it would be just really what I think is what you said, which is what's the empty land that's zoned commercial that has nothing there?
Yeah,
So
Okay.
he could probably do that, right? I think that's,
I think he can,
Okay.
yeah.
All
Pretty
right.
sure he can.
so if we can have that for next month, that would be awesome.
That's just, yeah, that's where my brain goes for financing the position. If you can quantify that open land that doesn't have a building, doesn't have a business now, what are our missed tax revenue opportunities on that? And if that justifies the, you know, $60,000 to $80,000, then I think that's at least a starting point to build something around.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay,
So one last thing on the budget.
yeah,
So your budget so far has made it through the select board, although they haven't finalized now because of the 1% reduction. However, we were paying dues for the chamber, Manchester Chamber of Commerce, which are like 350 roughly. And those were being paid out of a different line, so Derek has transferred that into the economic development budget. So the 5,000 is now, there's 5,000, but 300 and something will automatically go towards the chamber dues.
Which, okay.
that makes sense.
Which we
to me.
didn't have to budget for before because it was in another
Right.
Correct.
But it
account.
makes sense it would be with us.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else in the budget? I think you just said that was the last thing.
I think that's the last thing.
Okay. New Hampshire Department of Transportation plan to delay the I-293 exit 6 and 7 project. Dick, I believe you wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, I brought this up because I thought it was something that was important with regard to economic development. As you, probably a lot of you, I know Joanne would know this, the I-93 intersection, exits 6 and 7, Amoskeag Bridge, and then the Manchester Community College exit. That's been on the docket for the DOT as, I think, back 20 years ago when I was on this economic development and planning.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And they have kept pushing it off, and if you use that area at all, if anybody drives exit 6, 7, or 93 south or north, it's incredible how dangerous that interchange is. And there was funds that were allocated to put this on the 10-year plan. Okay, so it was supposed to be within this 10 years. And what the DOT did, and they were in town, they had one of their meetings, they had like 25 meetings around the state, and they chose Goffstown as one of those meeting sites. They didn't even have one in Manchester, which was surprising, but they brought Manchester people here.
They posted it like 24 hours in advance.
Yeah.
They didn't tell Manchester where all the construction is happening. Not that they didn't tell them, but they didn't have a meeting there.
And so, again, I don't know what the politics are there and what's going on, but the fact is that affects Goffstown I think, in a big way. Not only do our residents and our, certainly anybody that's a commercial business have to use, that's the one of two accesses that we have to this town. And if that could open up, but we talked, again, it was years ago, that Hackett Hill area, which part of it is certainly Manchester, and that's what Manchester wants, is like 125 acres of land that could be developed, industrialized. But on the other side of that, we have some land up in that Dunbarton Road area. And that's where exit 7 would be basically, they would build exit 7, a new exit 7, which would come right into Goffstown. So it'd be a new access to Goffstown. And, I mean, I think it's a huge potential for,
Did they remove that at some point,
remove it off
the idea?
No, it
No,
was on,
okay.
been in the plan, and it should have started in 2025, and that's the reason I bring this up. They've taken about $146 million away from that project. And that's what they were talking about in this meeting that I attended. And, you know, I went because I've seen this thing around for so long. I said, I gotta, you know, figure out what's going on. But it was mostly Manchester people, many advocating, and certainly the mayor had a representative there. The president of Manchester Community College was there, and they're all advocating for a change for that area, which is not only dangerous, but again, it really takes away from development, economic development for Manchester. But I think it applies to us as well, not as in such a big way. So my point by saying all this is that they want comments on the public, or comments on this by Friday, November 3rd.
Okay.
And I wanted to bring it up because I think it would be something collectively as a board that we should just make a comment to say that we encourage, I guess the best way to do it, and I had some thoughts about how to say it, but encourage that the project moves on as planned and that funding be kept in that, because that's what most of the advocates are saying for this, is to bring that money back in and delay other projects that just kind of slipped into that 10-year plan recently. And ours has been on there for, I don't know how long, right?
Did they say why they cut it?
What's that?
Did they say why they
No,
cut
what
it?
they've done is juggle other projects around. They've used that $146 million is somewhere on other projects,
Yeah.
okay? So that's the question, prioritizing it. So they want, I think the best thing is to be able to have enough people to say, hey, this is really important, and it's really important to our town. Jim, I ask you, has that been brought up before the select board at all? Nothing's been mentioned? Which is surprising to me.
Were there any reps there or something?
No,
Nobody?
no,
They
there
should
was
be
not,
sending
which-
letters
Not
in.
even the reps?
I'm sorry, the rep was, yeah, yeah, Judy Lanza was
Lanza?
there, who was our only rep that was there.
Wow.
So, none-
Maybe a letter coming from the selectmen too.
you know,
This committee as well, too.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can sign for the committee.
Yeah, I think that would make some, so the only thing about that would be, sure, for us, we're talking about economic development, which makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But if I'm them, they're thinking about safety, and I'm shocked that this would be delayed. I know exactly what you mean when they say how dangerous that is. But from an economic development standpoint, if we can literally put in a 3-line public comment that it is important for economic development that this project go forth and that the funding return to the project to start, when you say 2025?
Yeah.
To start 2025.
The way I look at it is, I said, any further delay or undercutting the amount of money towards it would diminish the possibility of growth to our town. Okay, not to mention, I mean, we're not in the safety business, but that's obviously, when you talk about safety, that's a big thing to say. I think most of it is based on safety, but we can throw that in there too.
Well, we can, and I think we should, because that's what they're going to respond to. That's their, one of their largest responsibilities is safe travel. But
And our citizens, our residents travel that road, and
All the time.
I can tell you, I've heard so many complaints. All you have to do is come up, try to approach Amoskeag Bridge from the south to get on the Amoskeag Bridge about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you actually are parked on 293.
on the breakdown thing.
It's scary. If you've ever been there, it's scary, because you're
Yeah,
thinking,
it is.
what's this 18-wheeler comes plowing down the road.
When you're going south there, yeah.
Getting on 293 on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side, same way.
That's
Both sides.
Same way.
It's awful.
That's just
I've
scary.
seen a
Go
lot
ahead,
of
Sarah.
comments on Facebook on the different public forums about the traffic in Goffstown and how there's no way to get in and out and that the traffic is backed up. So I think even talking about how our growth, how we're growing, and it's not, we would like to be able to have ways to get in and out of the town more efficiently and safely.
Well,
Absolutely.
the
I think
fact
that
is,
speaks to
we're a
safety.
pass-through town now for Ware, New Boston, which has built over the years as well. You know, Mass roads carried a lot of that traffic. Now we have the back road, which people have found out that that's another way to
Yep.
get into town or get out of town. But again, there's an awful lot of traffic there. So I think it's a critical project, so I think it's just worth noting. I have an email address that they left on their agenda to it's William Bill Watson, who's the DOT director in this case. I can give you this, Chad.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's on the bottom, but it's just a notation to, you know, to send it in by Friday, I think would be a wise move. And it might, well, you guys aren't meeting until next week. I'm surprised that it wasn't. Actually, yeah, when we went in, listened to your board meeting, and we were talking about the dam, it was brought up at the beginning of the meeting. They mentioned it, that there was going to be that meeting in town from DOT. And that's how I said, oh yeah.
Who mentioned that? I don't remember that.
At the beginning of the meeting, I'm trying to think who said it. I think it was Kelly that just, she was just saying things that were going on, looking ahead. It was kind of in a list of things, so it was really very quick mention of it.
Important.
So we would want to draft a quick statement that from an EDC perspective, we would like for this project to go on as planned, to return any funding that was reallocated somewhere else back to the project. We are a growing community and we'd like to be able to safely travel from our community to others and other communities to ours, and that access points are very important to economic development. So something along those lines.
Do you know if the money, that extra money, not extra, but the money that they took away, do you know if that was already spent on something?
No, they brought up a number of other projects, such as the widening of 293 in Bedford down to Merrimack. So it was insinuated that that money might be used there. And then 293 to the north towards Concord is supposed to be widened as well. And that was on the 10-year plan where it hadn't been before. So the question is, did that soak up some of that $146 million that they're taking away from?
But this project was already on the plan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is there more is there a website or information for the project?
There is actually. Let's see, I had, you know what, it might be on the,
it's not.
there was, yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
Can you tell me what that is?
So there's
If you wanna-
NH website, 10-year plan, there's a QR code. And see if
We can give that.
Will that take it?
just like a,
Did it work?
yeah, I just don't think I have service down here.
Oh,
Nobody
okay.
does.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of information on that site.
You're on the wait list.
And it tells you, it takes you through what's on that 10-year plan
Yeah,
as
we'll have to
well.
look at that. I don't think that should stop our, it sounds like it's a very reasonable comment.
No, I think we can, but I think we at least draft that statement, we can take a look.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that to us, because it is important.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that would be a bonus to Goffstown.
I remember going to those meetings years ago when I was working at Hooksett, and there was a big contingency from Goffstown.
Oh, absolutely.
Attending faithfully
They
every
were
time they had
pushing, yeah,
one.
they were pushing.
They were having it over
Yeah.
at the vocational school.
You can email it to me.
And aren't these plans
Chip
developed
Bowen speaks.
as part of the
Should
plan,
pop up
like
for
Southern New
email.
Hampshire planning?
Anybody else?
John, do you want that?
The way they
I got it.
develop
Just
these
pull it up.
transportation plans, doesn't Southern New Hampshire Planning get involved in that too?
They do.
Yeah.
And in fact, I got an email today from Southern New Hampshire where it was a survey to give your thoughts about this. And so I went on there and the link didn't work, and then I found out that they had taken the link down, that the survey was done. And they just sent it out today.
Was this a
Southern New
survey
Hampshire
of-
just sent it out today.
A survey about this particular project or the 10-year plan?
No, this particular
Oh,
project.
really?
So the link is not there any longer.
I can tell you, there was a lot of pushback from those that represented Manchester.
So do you need a motion for the letter?
Probably so that
Yeah.
I can write on behalf of everyone, so is
I'll
there?
make that motion, for
Thank you.
sure, that you would write a letter showing that, to be able to express our concern about the changes in that project, I-93 exit 6 and 7.
Okay,
Seconded.
seconded by John, so motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. So what I will do, and Joanne will remind me, of course, because I'll go into work tomorrow, but I will get an email from Joanne that will say, hey, remember that thing you said you would do? And then I will do it.
Yay.
But the wording that I threw out there works for everyone, something
Yeah, I
similar?
think so. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be sweet, but just
Short
to
and
show
sweet,
that
but there.
there's, it affects Goffstown.
You did.
And I sent it to you.
Thank you.
It's a right to, what I'll do is I'll
Oh, yeah,
BCC everybody. Okay. All right. So that being said,
I have
thank you.
just one more thing.
Yeah.
So a few meetings ago, Derek had brought to our attention the company down in Londonderry,
Yep.
the New Balance factory, that Londonderry had adopted RSA 7281, which is similar to 79, but you don't need to have, you don't need to rehab a building. You can just build a building, and you can still take advantage of those tax credits. And we talked about it, and I remember Chris had some concerns because you could spread out the payback over 10 years, and he thought that was too long. So I told Derek that you all were in favor of it, but his initial request was that the board meet with the select board, make a recommendation that they put it on the warrant for this year because it needs to be approved by the voters, and give some criteria that goes along with it. So in order for us to do that, I just had, what is your thought? Let me see here. So the choices are, let's see. So in Londonderry, in the first 2 years, so it's a payment in lieu of taxes. New Balance plans to invest at least $60 million in a new building. The agreement will apply to 17.8 acres of the 21-acre parcel, so it's not the entire parcel. State education and county taxes will be paid in full, so they're not involved with this. In the first 2 years, New Balance will see breaks in the municipal and education tax of 5% and 10%. In the third year, when construction is complete, the property is at full value, they will receive a 50% discount on its taxes, which will be reduced by 5% each year until the company is paying its full tax bill, which is 10 years. So you can adjust that. You don't have to go by that formula. It's pretty broad as to what you would be favorable to recommend.
Right.
So, kind of butting up with the earlier question about, how much unused commercial land that we have. I mean, is that something that we would be able to choose what criteria we tie that to? So if it's developing that previously undeveloped land or commercial land and
Right,
putting buildings
so-
there?
Basically, the way the 79E works is it's usually more for 5 years, but it could be less, but it's usually is what they grant is 5 years. And so if you're if your property, your building is worth $100,000 when you start the project, and in the end, it will be worth $200,000. That difference between the 100 and the 200 are not, they continue to pay the 100 taxes on the assessment of 100 for 5 years. And then when the 50 year hits or 60 year hits, then they pay the full value. So this is similar, but it sounds like it has a little bit more flexibility.
And is this the TIF article? Is that a tax incentive
The
zone?
79E is the TIF. I don't know if
Because
this one has a
they've
name
used that,
to it.
they've used that in town, I think,
Yes.
right?
The 79E is what we currently have, but that's only for existing buildings. So as an example, I can remember there was a developer who owns the land on Maple and Elm, and there was a building there, I think it was just a residential home. He tore it down, then went in with his paperwork to apply for the tax relief, and they said, oh, no, you have to have a building in order to do that. You can't do that on vacant land. So he kind of, messed that up. So
And this way we can though.
this way you can get it on vacant land.
So I don't
and
wanna
you go
speak
and
for
you
Chris,
build a house.
But I remember,
Or-
I think what he was saying was that like a company like this that we have the example from, thriving, super successful, maybe was a little bit much, it took 10 years, but if we're looking at our commercially zoned land and
Right.
the kinds of businesses we'll bring in, I have serious doubts it'll be this gigantic box store. So what I would say, but I mean, this is a vote, what I would say is that we would stick to those terms and make it as appealing to anybody who wants to come in here and start a business as we possibly can.
So Joanne, if this was approved, this would be for any business that meets that criteria, it's not, or is it taken on a business case by case basis?
So it's up to the selectmen, they handle the entire process.
Okay.
And they meet with the owner and they come to an agreement on what they will allow.
Okay.
But there are parameters. It's not just completely open-ended. I think 10 is the max, but you can certainly recommend that it be less than 10.
So this enables the select board to
That's
give
my
that tax
question, yeah.
incentive.
Correct.
That's why we need it as a tool.
So
Yes,
they can't
the
currently
voters
do
have-
that unless it's, okay.
Yeah, and the voters have to approve.
And
it
then they would
first.
have the ability to be able to
Yes.
negotiate
Yeah.
that with the business. Got it.
Yeah, because I always thought it would be the select board that would have that authority because it's affecting taxes, obviously.
So this law only went into effect in 2017, and it's called the town's, well, I'm sorry, he doesn't call it that. 79E is called the town's community revitalization tax relief incentive. I don't know what the name of this one is. I don't have the RSA in front of me.
So the other question I would have, I recognize we're talking parameters, but I would suggest the parameters that you said, if that's the best we can do. But the other question I would have is, businesses, I remember with the 79E, we were so sad because so many businesses found out about it, at some point, and they're like, oh man, I wish I knew that before I did this. So we would still need, obviously, each business to apply, to meet with the select board. Is that, I think, was
Yeah,
that the
they would
question you were
they would
asking?
definitely
Okay.
need to apply. I think the difference might be, if I remember correctly, 79E is only in certain quarters, like it's basically the Mastro quarter.
Yep,
I believe this one can be anywhere in the town.
great.
But I have to look that up, and I'm almost positive
great.
that's how it
Hotel,
works.
hotel.
So part of so obviously part of what we would do as a council is take the small funding that we have and start to reach out and educate people on. You going to a concert?
No, I was gonna look up the statute, but somebody started talking to me.
Way ahead of you. They already got it.
The other thing I would do, similar to what I brought up a long time ago with, I think it was sewer, is that when someone does come in to say, I'm going to open a business and register, we've got to have that education built into whatever information we're giving them, and see if someone upstairs, when they're talking to them, can mention it. Like, really make that a big deal, that this is, oh, you're thinking about Goffstown? Great. Or you're thinking about registering? Hey, this is what we
Right.
have to offer you. And hopefully, compared to our competitors, because someone said we're a pass-through town, well, so are some others around us, and I guarantee you they're going to take advantage of that, so we have to as well if we want to see this work. So that's what I meant by sewer was, I think sometimes there would be a call about like surprise fees, and I was always
Yeah.
bothered by that they would be surprise fees. So we just need to do, from the second they walk in, making sure we're educating them on this opportunity, I think would be huge.
So it'd be a good thing for us to include on our website.
100%.
Yeah.
We,
And something that we bring new businesses in, or, you know, if
Yeah.
they're thinking about coming into town.
when we have the technical review committees, meetings, we always tell them about it at that point. We have a different person now representing the sewer department, so he's a lot more outgoing as far as getting the information to the developers.
Sure. So I immediately regret saying sewer department. What I meant was just in general, this sometimes this disconnect
Right.
that doesn't allow for someone to understand the complete picture of what
Right.
they're doing when they want to start a business here. And this would be part of that complete picture, which would be a significant benefit. So
That we would offer this is
Yes.
this
educate them when they
Yeah.
walk in. Like, this is something that we are offering. And then, to Sarah's point, we could probably spend a little bit of our budget. We could add to the website, but we could also get the word out there some other way. We have to think about how exactly, but we could put some resources into that.
Joanne, so what is the ask of the EDC in relation to like just making a formal statement of recommendation?
I
or-
think Derek's looking for more in the line of like, what restrictions would you like to see? Like, would you like to have it go up to 10%, or would you,
10 years?
10 years?
See, I thought it said 50% at one
That's
point.
50%,
There we go.
yeah.
Yep.
10 years, or would you like it to be less than that, or, you know, would you like it restricted to certain areas or anywhere in the town? Because it is more, very much flexible compared to the 79E.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be the discussion, if somebody applied for that, that would be the discussion that they'd have at the select board level, saying, well, wait a minute, you know, we can't offer you this 10-year payout because you're not generating
Right.
X amount of dollars.
I think
that's
he's
the
just
review
looking for
process.
like what's starting as putting the ordinance
Right,
together.
right.
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 There needs to be
But that's what I'm
some
saying, you
criteria.
can just leave it as open as possible now, because it would be, you know, on a one-on-one basis when they applied for it, right?
I would think that some of this, I think, like one of the greatest opportunities, like depending on how much like, completely just open commercial land that we have, I mean, what better incentive to build a new building and then offset those costs and leveraging this, this is the 7281, right, that we're talking
Yes.
about. Leveraging that to incentivize people to build and put in some infrastructure around having a business there. You know, so 10 years comes, if they're still here, great. If not, it's there and it's
Yeah.
operational. I think the benefit from that, you know, depending on how much of this unused space we have, I think would be a huge benefit for the town.
So Derek, and I think what you said, Derek and/or the select board are looking to us for just a recommendation or our thoughts before they move forward with this,
They already have your recommendation that you're in favor of it,
just the parameters.
but we're just looking for what restrictions would you like put in place?
So the law itself that exists, would we like to add additional restrictions to said law? Okay, so let's have that discussion. I've already said what I thought. What are the other thoughts?
I think we should make it, just like you said, as favorable as possible.
Okay.
I mean, there's a site right on Mass Road that I can think of right now in the plaza. It's site ready. They said they have 2 spots they could
You know,
develop.
the pad sites right in the.
Yeah, I mean, incentivizing the right businesses or being able to, you know, would be smart.
Okay.
How often, I don't know, if there's something that's unanticipated, you know, would this be something that would be able to be removed if, I don't know, say if there were being taken advantage of?
Yes.
I
Sorry, go ahead.
Don't know if it needs to go back to the voters for that, since they're the ones who approved it. I don't know. I'd have to find that out.
But am I right in saying the select board would have discretion? We're just providing a recommendation that we think that there should be no parameters added to the existing law, but
I-
the select board would still have discretion business by business, right?
I'm just looking at it from the practical standpoint. If something has the ability to go for 10 years, most likely everyone will be coming in with a request for 10 years.
Mhm.
So in order for the selectmen not to look like they're being prejudiced from one
Mhm.
business to another,
Yeah.
they probably will steer with
Would
the
have
same
the
thing for
parameter.
everyone.
Makes sense.
So if you don't want it to be that long, then you'd have to put that in the ordinance when you first adopt it.
So I'm just thinking of if, like, it sounds good, but if there were businesses that were taking advantage and weren't, providing commensurate value back, the selectmen would have the opportunity to just, I guess, not grant it anymore to anybody else. Right? I'm just trying to think of any other.
Well, I'm not sure how it's worded, but isn't it, this article, or gives the opportunity for somebody to apply for it?
Yes,
Doesn't mean they're gonna get it in full.
no,
Right.
It just means that they can apply for it, right?
right.
So then they go in front of the select board, select board makes the decision. So I see it as being, yeah, you could grant it up to 10 years. Up.
But what
But
would
then-
make you
Yeah, I see your
do
point.
one 10 years and one
Exactly.
5 years? Like,
Well, it's, as we've been saying, is that business really gonna generate X amount of dollars in taxes? And, I mean,
Not what you're saying, so.
I'm sorry.
what was that?
I'm sorry.
The volume, he's looking up the RSA and every time he does it,
Yeah.
the commercial comes on.
I guess maybe I'm not totally understanding how they want this to read as a part of our
I
town
don't think
charter.
they know anything about it yet, because, it hasn't
Because
been
it seems to
accepted.
me is that it just gives us the opportunity to have these businesses, and we can say, listen, this is what we can offer you at this point in time, depending on what they're bringing to the table.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
it's just
I mean, it's
an
not-
incentive when we want the business. It doesn't have to be an incentive when we don't want the business. If somebody comes.
True, but, sorry.
Yeah, to be
But
careful.
the select board very wisely tries to steer away from anything that appears or is prejudiced towards a business based on some quality or judgment or quality of whatever the business is. So if that is, they do have the discretion, you are right about that, but if they do set a precedent based on what we recommend right now, and I stand by what I said still, even knowing that, that they could find themselves in trouble if they switch it for just one particular type of business, and that can bring the issue to a higher authority beyond the select board. And when we can not do that or avoid that, that is best. So I get it, but I would still say the recommendation would be in general that we make it as appealing and incentivize it as much as we possibly can and go with the letter of the law. But that is, I think, before we send this to the select board as our recommendation, we would need a motion and vote, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where I stand. Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
So I'm just reading the statute. Once adopted by the local legislative body, the percentage rate and duration of the exemption shall be granted on a per-case basis
Mhm.
based on the amount and value of public benefit as determined by the governing
There
body.
you go.
Mm-hmm.
Either
Sure.
to all properties within the municipality, or B, to a specific group or groups of parcels within the municipality as designated by the legislative body.
How is that benefit quantified though? Is it the value of the property that increases, right? Isn't it like,
It's the increase.
so,
For the purpose of this section, public benefits shall be defined by the local legislative body as part of the adoption of the property tax exemption. I guess that doesn't answer your question.
so what if,
I'd
like,
love
so
to-
I'm just thinking of like, so if it's an existing business that's making renovations, but there's not other further, they're renovating their buildings and, making things easier for them, their business more efficient, is there public benefit to that when it's already an existing business? So my thought is taking where there's no business currently, now putting a business in there where now you're generating, you will be generating more tax revenue versus existing businesses making updates to current, is that putting
I
out
would-
significant public benefit? Is there
Well, I
more
guess
tax
it
revenue
depends
that
what
will
they're
eventually be
doing.
coming out?
Like, say, for instance, if there's a restaurant and it's so popular that it's always, you know, overcrowded and like your place.
Yep.
And
Charlie.
by adding on to that restaurant, it's kind of a
Yeah,
public
well,
benefit
because-
because
yeah.
it's not
I-
as congested.
so I get
It's
that.
generating more tax.
Or
Yeah.
having
I-
our second location at exit 7.
So I get that. I'm just trying to think of, like, would there other businesses that would, so if, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding things correctly, but so that the select board could say if they determined their, you know, whatever renovations that we're going to be making was not going to produce, you know, public benefit, they could just say no. For, you know, and so I'm just trying to think of any other business
And
that
it
would
says
make
that there needs
renovations.
to
in
be a
it.
definition for the
Yeah,
public.
okay.
Yeah, well, public benefit,
Okay.
Broad
I
enough.
think I'm clear on it.
yeah.
Agreed.
So,
That's a good question.
So
No,
you're probably leaning more towards leave it as open-ended as possible, and also you would rather see it for the whole town versus a certain area.
Yes,
Oh,
for
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
entire commercially zoned area.
Okay.
The 79 EA thing, I think, did bring up a lot of issues that it was only for one area, so I would want to avoid that as much as possible.
It is a wide area, but still, it's still limited to Nest Road. There's nothing for the back road, and the back road is going to be the next section that starts to open up with businesses, because
A little bit's already, yeah.
the other side is getting full.
But there will be to just go a little bit further. When a new business comes in, there's always every consideration. So it may be that the business covers the cost of adding a turning lane or something, and that can sometimes just be like, I'm not covering that cost, but this break could allow that business to go, you know what, with this break, I will do that, and that's certainly a benefit to the public. And so there's lots of ways that this can be beneficial. So I think that's kind of, I think you're there, you got there. Charlie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was all for the way it was proposed last meeting. Like,
Yep.
my opinion has not changed at all.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
I'm,
Somebody had mentioned the TIF district. This has nothing to do with the TIF
I
district.
mentioned that.
Yeah, that's
That's-
something
that's
entirely different.
So do we have a motion to recommend that the board utilize the law to its full beneficial extent?
Motion.
That's it.
second.
Second by Charlie, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So Joanne, that will just go to them at their next meeting from us?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. One last thing for next agenda, I think we can obviously keep the zoning and planning agendas, but like, we can get those, that would be great to take a look at. And then if we can invite the rep for, I forget the name that you said, I'm sorry, but the rep from New Hampshire Steel to come in and talk to us, that would be great. Anything else for the next agenda? Anyone else to talk about? Okay, all right, then do I have another motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion,
Second.
second by Charlie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,